Hey guys, Elizabeth here from Plant-Based Bride, and I'm back for another episode of Last Week in Vegan. The first story of the day is that Tilikum, the orca that became famous from the documentary Blackfish, has passed away. This is the third orca to die suddenly at Seaworld in recent months. The orca was 35 years old, while male orcas in the wild can live as long as 70 years. PETA's Senior Vice President, Lisa Lang, issued a response to Tilikum's tragic death. She said, "Seaworld needs to release all of its remaining animals from its parks. The orcas, beluga whales, bottlenose dolphins, sea lions, walruses, and the other animals who remain in Seaworld's tanks and exhibits. Tilikum must be the last orca to die inside a Seaworld amusement park." This is very sad news, as Tilikum has come to represent a movement of people understanding the cruelty inherent in keeping wild animals captive. Blackfish was the film that really exposed Seaworld for what it was, and has begun this huge movement from animal rights activists and others to boycott Seaworld and other places like it. And that film that focused on Tilikum, that film was the start of a movement of people rejecting places that make money off of the captivity and the suffering of animals. I personally am very sad to see Tilikum go. Keeping on the topic of SeaWorld, the next story of the day is that SeaWorld will hold its final orca show on Sunday, meaning yesterday. So yesterday was the San Diego Amusement Park's final show that was featuring live orcas. They will no longer be doing these shows. They will continue to hold the orcas in captivity, but they will no longer be forcing them to do tricks in front of crowds of humans for money. Instead, they will be pushing other attractions like their new roller coaster. I was surprised that it took them this long from the 2013 release of Blackfish to early 2017 to end these live orca shows. The amount of pressure they've been getting from the public at large, not just animal welfare groups and animal activists, has been insane, and it's caused their stock to go way down, it's caused them to end their breeding program, and yet it took them this long, 4 years, to stop their live orca shows. I'm glad that they're finally over, and hopefully the pressure will only continue to mount until they allow their captive animals to live in more humane spaces, even if they can't be safely released back into the wild. The next story of the day is a follow-up on a story that came into the news a couple months ago, and that is that an advocacy firm shoots down congressmen's milk petition. So you may have heard of this petition filed by 32 congressmen with the FDA last month. Their hope was to relabel any plant-based milks to remove the use of the word milk for anything that didn't come from an animal. They stated that the current labels are misleading and are in violation of the standard identity of milk. The current definition of milk is based on the 1930s definition, which stated it must be made from the mammary glands of one or more healthy lactating cows. In response, Emily Bird, who is the communications manager of the Good Food Institute, wrote an op-ed recently published in the Los Angeles Times. She pointed out that under this definition, even other animal milks shouldn't be called milk. Goat juice doesn't exactly caress the ears, she wrote. In her op-ed, Emily pointed out the exponential growth of the dairy-free milk industry, driven by a strong consumer demand for these plant-based milks. And she compared it to the fall of the dairy industry, which we are seeing loud and clear with dairy farms closing, huge bailouts, and the dumping of huge quantities of unused milk. Average milk consumption has reduced from 12 ounces in the 1970s to only 7 ounces today. Bird also pointed out that consumers aren't buying plant-based milks because they were tricked into thinking that they came from a cow. Consumers are more than aware that almond milk doesn't come from a cow. That's probably why they're buying it. The Good Food Institute's policy director, Nicole Negawetti, has pointed out that this seems to be a trend. The congressmen that signed this petition come from large dairy-producing states, and it's very similar to what we've recently heard coming out of Germany from the German agricultural minister, Christian Schmidt, who has called for a ban of the use of the word meat from any products that don't actually contain meat, so plant-based meats. The Good Food Institute believes that this is an attempt of those who support the animal agriculture industry to reduce the competition and to make it more difficult for plant-based companies to grow and flourish. I have to say, it's pretty obvious that they're not trying to protect consumers by saying that it's confusing to call something milk that didn't come from a cow. People get it. They realize that soy milk didn't come from an animal called a soy, or it's not just a different kind of milk that comes from a cow. We get it. People know, they're not idiots. And the fact that they're pretending that this is for the good of the people is just incredibly aggravating. As my husband likes to say, this is all the final death rattle of the animal agriculture industry, and I couldn't be more excited for it to be over. The next story of the day is a fun one. The world's first ever vegan-themed race car will debut at the Daytona racetrack next month. The race car is an electric Toyota Camry that is completely vegan-themed. It will be driven by the vegan race car driver, Leilani Munter. It reads vegan-powered across the hood and features all synthetic interiors. This comes from a race car driver that has previously driven cars covered with the Cove and Blackfish, constantly showing up and doing her own form of advocacy. The 42-year-old vegan race car driver has been named one of the top 10 female race car drivers in the world by Sports Illustrated, and she offsets the emissions that she causes by being a race car driver for a living by using only solar energy in her pit box and adopting an acre of rainforest after every single race. According to Munter, the car was designed to bring a powerful vegan message to millions of race fans on and off the track. She's also partnered with the non-for-profit A Well-Fed World to raise funds for a vegan outreach campaign, including food giveaway and vegan starter kits to correspond with the debut of the vegan car. Leilani's doing an amazing job of finding a way in her own niche to be a vegan advocate, and I applaud her for what she's doing. The final story of the day is big news in the animal agriculture industry. The FDA has reformed farmed animal antibiotic policy. Under this new law, agricultural antibiotic retailers must update their labels to indicate that their products are not to be used to increase farmed animal growth. In addition, these antibiotics can only be given to animals in the presence of a veterinarian and with a prescription. The fact that there is more regulation will cause the prices to go up, which will also discourage farmers from using them unnecessarily. Unfortunately, the policy isn't rock solid. There are some loopholes, including not having very strong indicators of how long after the illness the antibiotics can be used for, meaning that a farmer could continue to use these growth-enhancing antibiotics for a long period after the animal has recovered from its sickness in the attempt to cause it to grow quicker. The chair of the Review on Antimicrobial Resistance put out a paper in May 2016 showing that 700,000 people die from antibiotic-resistant illnesses every single year, a number that could rise to 10 million per year by 2050 without intervention. So luckily this law has been introduced, and while it's not perfect, hopefully the fact that these antibiotics can now only be used with a prescription will cause a great reduction in the use of antibiotics in the animal agriculture industry, which is good for everyone involved. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's Last Week in Vegan. Let me know your thoughts on the stories covered in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you don't want to miss any videos from me, and I'll see you really soon in my next one. Bye. Don't forget to follow me on social media. Check out my last video on nutrition for mental health. And if you're feeling generous, consider supporting me on Patreon. Even $1 a month makes a huge difference to me being able to put out this content for you.